We're back. Yeah. We had a little technical problem, but we think we've got that fixed now. So we're joined by Vince.
Little glitch, right?
We were talking about burnout from therapy. And
Yes.
my son's been in therapy for 12 years. That's a long time. And there are days when I feel like if I have to do this drive to the center one more time, I'm going to kill myself.
Well, and gosh, we hope not, right? But it can feel really bad. And I've been talking with parents a lot lately who are at that point. And as I was saying before, Vince had a really interesting take on that. So Vince, what do you want to say about it?
Well, now I'm nervous on what my take was. I don't remember.
Would you like me to refresh your memory?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to my mind, at least when since we started talking about the topic, is being aware, is identifying that burnout is happening. And as I was explaining earlier before the audio cut out, there's a lot of different variables that play into burnout. It's not just the length of time, right? There's a lot of different things that developmentally go on differently, not only for the child, but for us as the parents as well. So the first thing is to be able to be aware of it and actually embrace it. Know that we're getting burned out. Know that we're kind of at the end or that we're really starting to struggle with this. And then being able to communicate that. Talk to the supervisor about that. Talk to your professionals about that. Let them know this is how you're feeling, because there's a lot of accommodations, a lot of things that we can do together to kind of change it up, mix it up again. Make sure that, we get that fire again, we get that hope, we get that desire to continue treatment because we know that it's been successful. So the first thing is to identify it and to be able to communicate that to your professionals or to your supervisor.
Yeah, and honestly, Vince, that was really what you said to me, is that we need to help, when we hear this from parents, we need to help them to get them to a place where they're seeing where the progress is happening so that they get excited again, but to be very mindful and cognizant of the fact that burnout is a real thing.
And it's also a real thing with our kids. Let's talk about that. Kids that are burnt out from therapy.
Right. And the same thing, right? When we start seeing signs that the kids are getting burned out of therapy, especially when therapy's been so successful over time, us as the professionals need to look at how do we change the program design so that the children become reinforced again. They get more motivation. Maybe it's just the same routine that we're in and out. We need to do things differently. Maybe we need to change locations. Maybe we need to add more reinforcement. Maybe we just need to, to reprogram and do different lessons that will still shoot for the same goals, but we have to do it in a different way so that it's more exciting. It's a change. It's different. It's something that's actually motivating for them so that we can do that. I think sometimes especially kids that have been in the programs longer, right? These are discussions that we want to have with the supervisors before it becomes a big deal, right? Because it's going to happen. It's not if it's going to happen. It's when it's going to happen. For any child and family that's been in treatment for long periods of time, these are the types of things that we need to do to prevent it from, negatively affecting any type of treatment or any type of treatment progress. So dealing with it, talking about it, making accommodations, making modifications to the program, either direct program for the child or the routines and paperwork, like Shannon was saying, and the assessments and all those things. Like, do I need to do these again? There's lots of things that we can do together to make that at least more palatable and at times making it more reinforcing again.
And I'm going to say too that I think that there's an element of it as a parent, and Nancy, tell me if you feel this way too, where it's really hard to admit when you're a burnout, because it sounds, even in our own heads, like we're saying, I don't want to do the work.
Right.
But we do want to do the work. And I think it's hard for a parent to admit that that's where they're at. I think we usually wait way too long to say that we're at that, and it only comes out in a spurt of anger. Right? Because like it's the only way you can get it out of us is sort of the thing. And I just want to put out a thing to parents to say you shouldn't be ashamed of having burnout at all. And it doesn't make you a bad parent.
Right.
Caregiver burnout, first of all, is a very real thing, and in no way does it imply that you are lazy or don't care deeply about the person that you're taking care of. It really is a symbol that you need to take a step back and get your batteries charged so you can come back and plug back in. But I know it was hard for me on the days when I didn't feel it, and I was like, ugh, I don't know how I'm ever gonna continue doing this. I didn't want to admit that. Do you feel that way, Nancy?
Yeah, you feel, first of all, I feel a little embarrassed because I feel like I should be grateful.
Right.
I should be grateful that my son's getting this therapy. So I feel a little bit like remorseful that I'm even thinking of being burnout.
Yeah.
Like all the kids that can't get therapy and here's my
Right.
son's getting it. And I should be grateful for that. So that's when I feel burnout, I feel like, oh, you ungrateful,
Right. When in fact, everybody knows that you're grateful for it, and the burnout still needs to be treated.
Right.
About the anger thing, Vince, I know that once a month I had to fill out that, I don't know which form it is, where it would ask you questions about personal questions.
Right.
Like, I remember one of the questions was, how do you feel about the last article of clothing you purchased? Because, and I remember at a certain point kind of yelling at Art, who was the person who was administrating, and I was like, why is this relevant? And poor Art, he sat me down and he said, let me show you something. And he showed me on the graph of my answers, and he said, we're checking to make sure that you're being honest with us. He said, this is a question that verifies whether your scores match up with if you're telling, and I was like, really? Is that what that does? And then I hated it less as a result of taking that time. But it was very passive aggressive of me that I didn't just say, this is an annoying question and I don't know why I have to do it. I was like, what's happening with it? Why do you care so much? How is this relevant? I shouldn't have to answer. What does this have to do with autism? Like the police or something.
Right. But remember, we're taking care of the whole family, right?
Yeah.
So taking care of the family and the parents is equally important as taking care of the children, right? And that's what that assessment was for, was to make sure that we kind of have a heads up of burnout, or we have a heads up that parents might have some questions about therapy, or that they're not, they're really not, maybe they're disengaging from the treatment more passively. And that gives us a little bit of a heads up so that we can reach out and say, hey, what can we do to help you? What can we do to make this better? And one of the secrets is, guys, is the therapist and the clinicians, they burn out too.
Yeah.
So having that communication back and forth, I think, is revitalizing for the whole team, because everybody's now admitting it, right? Clinicians don't want to admit that. And as you both said, parents feel remorseful or ungrateful to admit it. And then the kids, right, they oftentimes, would rather go do something else. So by having us have that communication and actually having that discussion actually helps everybody, because it's the change that everybody might need.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So being honest about it, being upfront about it, and then as a team looking at how you can freshen things up, how you can shake things up, do things a little bit differently, make things fun. All of that's super important.
Yeah.
I love my dad, who was a very, practical person. And he was cautious about everything and practical. But he would even say, if you're not having fun, what's the point of the whole thing?
Right.
And I forgot that many times in therapy, that he was supposed to be having fun, that I was supposed to be having fun, because it didn't always feel that way.
No, of course not.
And this is another side part of it, that as I'm talking more and more to parents, Vince, I'm hearing that a lot of them don't understand that your therapy can be taken other places and should be taken other places, that you can go to a museum and do therapy at a museum. It doesn't have to always be in the home or in the center.
I had realized for the longest time that my child was able to go to restaurants with the therapist and have a meal with them, and that breaks it up and makes it fun for him to go to different places. And I did tell another parent told me when I'm like, oh, I hate having to bring him home at 7:30 and then feed him dinner. She's like, why don't you just have him do it at card?
And work on the things that he needs to work on in a restaurant, because there's a bunch of skills that need to be worked on in real life in a restaurant. I think that sort of frees things up too. And is that what you mean by helping to freshen it up too, Vince?
Right. Absolutely. Change location, change stimuli, change the way we're presenting things. Do it in a game form, do it in different things, different ways. And the other thing, as I was thinking about it too, is the more we're able to talk about it, right, we start then avoiding some of that. You had mentioned passive aggressive. We start staying away from those unnecessary cancellations and loss of treatment because of the burnout, right? Yeah. It's a lot easier just to cancel the parent meeting, cancel a clinic, cancel some sessions, rather than, and then the child's losing treatment, rather than what we're saying right now is change location. Say, you know what? It's, he really wants to go to this, new park that's out there, but it's right during session time. Let's do it. Let's go work on play skills. Let's work on socialization skills. Let's work on compliance, work on language, work on generalization. So many different things we can work on in excuse me, in that change of environment. And sometimes it's good for everyone to have that discussion because we all fall sometimes into routines and patterns. And with that in mind, for those clinicians that are watching and viewing our show today, also make sure that every time you're meeting with the family, we're talking about the gains, we're talking about the progress, we're talking about the successes, as well as the things that need to improve, right? Because one of the things I hear from families very often when they start talking about burnout, about meetings, is that it's a constant reminder of what their child cannot do.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Rather than the progress that they've made and how we're going to continue to make more progress. Yeah. And I think that balance is extremely important because nobody comes in trying to put anyone, to make anyone feel like this, right? It's just talking about the programs, what needs to move and what we need to work on and so forth and so on. But if we don't talk about the success, we don't talk about the progress, we don't talk about the gains that they've made, then we burn out on hearing what they can't do.
I think that's a really important thing, especially for families that it's a longer haul.
Right.
Because I remember, when we started services at CARD, a family had told us that clinic was like the most important thing and to never cancel a clinic, like crawl if you have to be at clinic. The only time not to come to clinic is like if the CDC has said you're contagious and it really would have to be the CDC to not go. And that not just me, but that my husband as well needed to be there at the clinic. And I'm so glad that parent shared that with me because I don't know that we would have taken it as seriously as we did. And I really feel like it made a difference for us. But every single time, the clinic was not easy. And every single time we left the clinic, we would go downstairs at the old CARD building and we would get into the car. And I would shut the door and I would sigh very heavily. And my husband would say, what's going on? And I would say, I just want to cry. And he would say, you do? And I would say, yes, I just want to cry because it just reminds me how far behind we were. Every single time we did the same thing like it was scripted, right? It didn't change the fact that the clinic really was helpful and looking back was a large part of the success that we had, but I still had those feelings every single time, every single time. And I can't imagine, we did 5 years, you're telling me you're 12 years in, and to have that over and over again.
Yeah, it's like you sort of go, oh God, we have clinic today.
Right.
And you're just so burnt out on it, but it is so important, as you point out.
Well, and I want to point out, Nancy, you're somebody who goes to your clinic, and even it's 12 years later, and during that time you lost your husband, and you're still going there yourself. Right. It's hard, but you're still going because it's worthwhile to go. But you still have those feelings, and it feels like, will this ever end? Is this the rest of my life? Right. And we need to talk about that and have people know that they're not alone when feeling like that, and encourage them to share that with their team that they're feeling that way.
Right. Absolutely, because it's our job as the clinicians to make those accommodations, right? And to make sure that we are showing the progress. We are showing, look, he's made all these gains and the behaviors have really dropped and he's gained this skill and that skill and now he's generalizing this, he's emerging in these areas. And it's just as important to talk about that than it is the stuff that still needs to improve.
I
And
just
the
feel,
clinicians need to know that if that's not how it's coming across.
yeah, I feel like this is such an important conversation. We could talk about this forever. We're out of time though. But Vince, we want you to share how, there are a couple of different ways that people can see you. You're on, you're part of CARD, but you also have a private. How would you like to tell people if they want to get a hold of you?
If they need to get a hold of me, the best way is through email at v.redmond, REDMOND, just my last name, at centerforautism.com.
Okay, and feel free to reach out to Vince if you have other questions, or you can reach out with questions for Vince with us here.
Yeah.
Vince, thank you so much
Thank
for the
you,
work
Vince.
that you do and for sharing it with us here on the
Thank you
show.
for a very important topic and shed a lot of light on it. Thank you.
Have a great rest of the day.
Okay,
You too, bye-bye.
Bye.